Many recipes out there for making Play-Doh. Some of them require cooking, some of them don't, some of them have salt, some of them don't. You can find any number of directions on how to create your own Play-Doh. Today we're going to be using this recipe, which will require you to have a mixing bowl and a measuring cup, a spoon or stick or something that you want to use to stir, some warm tap water, salt, cooking oil, food coloring, and of course, flour. So notice there's no cream of tartar, there's no heating involved. This is a simple activity that you can do in your very own. So the first things that you're going to do when you're making your Play-Doh is you're going to mix the 1/4 cup of warm water with about 1/8 of a cup of salt, which is about 2 tablespoons. Okay, so this is Play-Doh. This is kind of what it looks like when you buy it at the store. You take it out, it's lovely, squishy. This isn't what our Play-Doh is going to look like. We're going to create something different because we're scientists. So I've laid out all the things that we're going to need in order to create some Play-Doh. Clear plastic bowl, some measuring utensils, a spoon, flour, salt, some warm water, oil, and some fun food coloring. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to get a 1/4 cup of, let me move these out of the way, a 1/4 cup of warm water. So let's see, get this in here, the right cup. You can see that the water's nice and warm. Get that in there. Okay, and then I'm going to add about a tablespoon of salt. Okay, and so when I add this and mix this up, I want you to look here very carefully. So there's my water, and there's my salt. I'm going to mix this in, and I want you to tell me, or I want you to think about what it is that you are noticing. What's happening to the water? Is it changing color? What's happening to the salt? What seems to be going on here, do you think? Okay, is anybody thinking about, like, what do you notice happening to the salt? Next, you're going to add 2 tablespoons of oil and observe what happens when you add the oil to the salt water solution. Great. Okay, so we notice that it seems like the salt has disappeared. Okay, now we're going to add some oil here, just regular oil, and I want you to look at our bowl and see what happens when I add the 2 tablespoons of oil. Is the oil, a little bit more than that. Is the oil behaving the same way that the salt did? I want you to look at that. What's happening with the oil? Like, can you see right here? Did it mix in, or can you see that the oil is doing something a little bit different? Okay.
Is it staying separate?
Looks like it's kind of staying separate. It doesn't want to mix as well. But if I stir it up a little bit, okay, you can even see it more, those little dots of oil in there. Like, the oil just does not want to mix with the water. Next, select a color for your Play-Doh. You want to add a few drops of food coloring to your solution. What happens when you add that food coloring? Okay, so next we're going to add some food coloring. You can add a little bit or a lot. The more that you add, the darker the color is going to be. So let's see, if we add 1, 2 drops, what do you see, what are you noticing happening right there? Okay, is it combining, or is it kind of staying separate? What if I add, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. That's a lot of drops. Do you see? It's very interesting because what are you noticing happening with the food coloring? Got some dots here. Ooh, And then did you see that one just explode? Right, so it looks like sometimes it mixes and then sometimes it stays separate. You can kind of see right here, do you see the oil right here at the top, and how that is still staying separate from the water? So it looks like the food coloring is combining with what? Now let's add the flour. We're going to add about 1 cup of flour. Don't add the flour all at once. Add a little bit at a time, stirring after each to see what happens. Make sure you do careful observations. Okay, so up until this point, we've been adding only liquids. We've been adding hot water, oil. Oh, I lied. We actually added a salt, but the salt seemed to disappear, and we still just have a liquid solution. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a cup of flour. So I'm going to scoop out some flour here to get like 1 cup. This is just regular all-purpose flour. Okay, try not to make too big of a mess here. Okay, so there's my flour. And I want you to notice what happens to our liquid solution here as I add the flour. So I'm going to add a little bit. I'm going to stir that in. Use my other hand a little bit better. Okay, so let's mix, mix, mix. Okay, does it still seem pretty liquidy? It still seems fairly liquidy, but
The flour looks like it's combining with the liquid.
you're right. It does seem to be dissolving like the salt did. Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's true. And what happened to the color?
It diluted, so it's a lot lighter now.
It sure did. Okay, so let's add a little bit more. Now I've added about 2/3 of the flour, and oh my goodness, it's getting a little bit more challenging to mix here. What has happened to our liquid? Is it still a liquid?
Mm-mm.
It is not. It's much thicker, right? Like, look at that. It's sticking to the spoon. All right, shall we add the rest of the flour?
Yeah.
Let's see what happens now. Okay. Ooh, and what happened to the color of our Play-Doh?
It's lightened a lot because when you add white paint to any other color, doesn't it get lighter?
It seems to be. Ooh, it's interesting. Oh my gosh, do we still have a liquid?
No.
We do not have a liquid, do we? We have a solid. I have been able to change, look at that, it comes up all the way around the sides of the bowl. And now with a cup of flour and a little bit of salt and some oil, I have some fun Play-Doh, right? This no longer pours like a liquid. Okay, this is
Fun moldable Play-Doh.
a mushy solid, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So there you go, fun Play-Doh. So I believe in recycling and reusing. So what I'm going to do now that I have my Play-Doh is I've got these leftover Play-Doh containers, and check it out, it's even the right color. So I'm going to see how much of my Play-Doh I can fit, ooh, looks like I'm going to have to take some out, into my little plastic container. And now I have my Play-Doh and more left over for somebody else.
Sharing is caring.